My name is John Foley. I'm an immigration lawyer in Boston, Massachusetts. I run Foley Law Offices. I was born in Portland, Maine, to two grandparents. My grandparents, all four of my grandparents are from County Galway. I didn't know my father's parents. They had passed before I arrived, but my grandparents on my mother's side were very important people in my life. Everything in their home was Irish. The language spoken was Irish, the music was Irish, the doilies on the table, Irish, the newspaper, Irish. My grandmother came when she was 17 years old. They had an Irish wake for her. Not only did she say goodbye to her parents at the age of 17, she had two younger brothers who would have been 6 and 9, and she would have been like their second mother. And she had an American wake and said goodbye to all of that. And she left Ireland at the age of 17, but Ireland never left her. Delia O'Toole Curran was Irish every day of her life for the rest of her life. She married a man from Galway. If you heard the two of them talk, you would have thought that they were from the opposite ends of the island. Years later, when I actually found his house, I measured the distance between their houses, and they were 5.5 miles apart. But listening to them talk, you would have thought that they were on different continents. My grandmother seemed to know the difference between famine and genocide. She always talked about food. When she first arrived in Boston, her sister met her, and she was on her hands and knees 3 days later scrubbing floors in Portland, Maine. And I remember saying to her, that must have been terrible. And she said, no, they fed me and they paid me. And you can bet most of the money she was paid made its way back to Inverin in County Galway. Like I said, she had a sense about Irish history. On the ship log, when she came in, on the ship log, they had, can you read English? And hers was pretty much the only one that was checked. And they were all girls. They were not women, they were girls. They were 15, 16, and 17. And it had, how much money do you have in your pocket? They all had 25 cents. She had 25 cents. One woman was wealthy. She had $5. And there was another one who only had 5 cents. But my grandmother could read and write both Irish and English. And what would happen over the years is the longshoremen in Portland, Maine, who couldn't read and write, would come to her door. And your job as the grandkid was to open the door, take their coat, hang it up in the coat hanger, bring them into the parlor, and then go turn on the kettle. And she would read and write their letters back and forth, and she would also do their bills. She had what I think was a great sense of Irish history. To say that she was not fond of the British would be an understatement. And she was also very much into Irish literature and poetry, and she passed that on to her kids. My mother, who was born in Portland, Maine, was a fluent Irish speaker. I didn't quite realize how good of an Irish speaker she was until I took her back to Spittal in County Galway, and the locals were floored by her ability to speak the language. She was not overly religious, but she would go to 2 and sometimes 3 masses on Sunday, because after mass people would go outside and she could talk to the folks in Irish, and she just loved to use the Irish. And she used to recite a poem to us when we were kids to put us to sleep. It was called 3 Grains of Corn. And I actually, it starts off, give me 3 grains of corn, mother, give me 3 grains of corn. I can't tell you how it ends because I don't think I ever made it to the end without falling asleep. And for years, we thought that my mother actually wrote that, because when we learned to write cursive, that was the poem that we practiced on, give me 3 grains of corn. And in her papers, we found her handwritten version of the same poem. So we just kind of always assumed that she wrote the poem, when in fact she didn't. She never said she did, but it was kind of a surprise to my brothers and I when we realized that it was actually written by an author from Boston. But it's a lovely poem, and it talks about the pain of the Great Hunger and how unnecessary it was, and it's through the eyes of a young boy whose mother is not able to give him 3 grains of corn.